It's 24 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. It's September 10 and it's 26
well, I'm usually
degrees
never
here in
alone.
Lagos.
I'm still waiting.
Well, yes, but where am I, Makinde? It's September 10 and it's 26 degrees here in Lagos and it's a Wednesday morning, just so you remember. Well, it's that month and quite a lot of things are already happening, particularly in Abuja, Maupe. Isn't that the case?
Well, it depends on what it is. If you ask me, as a mom today, I'm celebrating, but maybe there are other things to celebrate and maybe other things not to celebrate. But let's start with some of the things that at least we can heave a sigh of relief on. We've been tracking this issue of a strike called by Nupeng, which was going to be supported by Pengassan. And just in case you're wondering who Nupeng is, they're the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, who has threatened a strike over the refusal of the management of Dangote refineries to let their over 4,000 drivers, their tanker drivers, to be a part of their union. And that discussion had been going on for 2 days. The first time Nupeng brought the matter to attention, I think, was on Sunday evening. And immediately the federal government called for a discussion seeking to broker a truce. That fell through the cracks, it would seem, when they had a discussion with the Minister of Labor and the Minister of State for Labor. There was a deadlock of sorts. But today we're happy to report that it seems that a truce of sorts has been brokered now by the Department of State Services. Now, some people ask, was a truce brokered or were some people's hands arm twisted? I don't know. What we do know is that when Nupeng calls a strike, it usually has very disruptive effects on the economy. And I know that a lot of Nigerians will be very relieved to see that this strike, before it started to have any real effect on the cost of energy or their access to energy, has now been called off, and both parties walking away with an agreement that seems acceptable to them. I do know that on our sister program, The Morning Brief, a representative of Nupeng was there to, give their own side of the argument and perhaps to say why it is that they've called off the strike. So if you missed that particular conversation, you can go back on YouTube, or you just wait until it's uploaded any moment now and you can catch up on the conversation. But here we are with this broker truce, and I can tell you, Ayo, I am so relieved, because thinking about it yesterday, I said to myself, look, I'm not going to queue for any petrol. Petrol is already expensive as it is. It's already difficult enough to buy. Nobody's going to make me have palpitations over this. I do not know if that was the same situation with you, Ayo.
Well, there is no one I know on earth, much less in Nigeria, way much less in Lagos, that wants to queue for petrol. I mean, take that to the bank. But whether or not this issue is put to a final rest is something that I think I would still take with a pinch of salt, because there is no gainsaying it. The issues are quite there. Nupeng is an association, and it has its right to do whatever it wants. So is DAPMAN, and so are other, interests groups like that all over the place. The right to unionize belongs to every Nigerian. The right of association, freedom of association, belongs to everyone. But then the right to choose what association I belong to belongs to me as well. So it's, all a choice, right? Whichever way we look at it. As I said, we just look to how this issue, this resolution or reconciliation or conciliation, whatever it is, eventually sustained for the longest time. Because just as you said, Maupe, when Nupeng coughs, quite a number of people catch a cold all over the nation. Do we want that kind of system to continue? I think I'll take a pinch of salt on that. Well, that's something to cheer. Another thing to cheer Dicey or not? Is the Super Eagles outcome? I don't know what you think about that one. There are those who are saying, okay, so it was a draw. Okay, well, we had an own goal. Okay, well, this happened, that happened. Whether or not Nigeria is still going to the World Cup, that's another thing altogether. That's a number of people are still wondering, you know, how that is going to be. My colleague, Cecilia, was on the morning brief this morning talking about it. And, of course, Jeffrey is not... It's not a laughing matter for Jeffrey. But hey, the issues are still there. Is this something to cheer for you, Markwe?
Well, Ayo, I'm going to start with you. I do know that even if the Super Eagles win and qualify eventually for the World Cup, I know you will not be watching. So I don't know whether it is it is anything to cheer. I know that you'll be protecting your heart and guarding it very jealously from being broken. I don't know which gives me more palpitations, the sound or the threat of strike or the Super Eagles going to go and play. But I do know, I think we should pray for them. Pray for them, pray that they qualify. Because, you know, if they qualify, I do know a lot of Nigerians were saying people that will crash out in the first round. If they don't qualify, they're still damned. So they had better qualify at least and make sure that we're able to hold our heads high, especially with our Ghanaian neighbors, you know, watching very closely what becomes of our Super Eagles. But, Ayo, enough of the celebration, because there are also other matters that are yet to be straightened out in our polity. Quite a lot happening. And I'd like to start with this particular issue. This imbroglio, it was same with the Senate and Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. She had written to them asking to resume because her suspension has now, the period of her suspension, she was suspended for 6 months from what we understood, has now elapsed. However, the Senate is saying, no, not yet, because we still have a number of other things that we have a number of processes, and then there are matters in court. However, her lawyers are arguing that you said the court cannot stop you. The courts do not have jurisdiction over what it is that you do in the Senate. How come it is now that you're waiting for this appeal to elapse before you finally admit her into the chambers when the initial period for suspension was 6 months? So it does raise a matter that a number of Nigerians are concerned about, and people ought to be concerned about it. Is this is this an excessive use of power now by the authorities, by the leadership of the Senate, very specifically? I was going to say the National Assembly, but the House of Reps is not involved in this one. So I think that there needs to be a little more clarity how it is now that the National Assembly, or will I say the Senate, is waiting for this appeal to be decided one way or the other, when in the first instance they had said that the judgment of the first court, the court of first instance, did not exactly have a jurisdiction on their own internal matters to discipline their own members. Well, we'll be talking about that and a number of other issues with our guest this morning, who's already seated right beside us here. We have with us Mr. Kasim Afegbua, who is a commissioner designate in Edo State. Well, this is the matter that we're discussing. We have a number of issues, really, and I know that, but this is where, you know, we want to start with this issue of politics. Is this politics being taken too far? Or, as you know, would you say that the leadership of the Senate, I have to be very specific, the leadership of the Senate right now, they're leveraging their authority, they're leveraging too much on their authority?
Well, I don't know what is leveraging too much on the authority. I think the letter the clerk of the Senate sent to Natasha was very explicit. I'm not a lawyer, but common sense and logic presupposes that when you have a case in court and you want to, midway, you want to benefit from that case when it has not been dispensed with, there is a problem.
Excuse me.
I expect Natasha that going to court, she went to press for, you know, her fundamental human right, her right to sit in the Senate, to vacate that suspension ab initio. Now, that suspension has become a litigation against the Senate. Until you dispense with that litigation, you cannot migrate because you have completed your 6 months. Come and say you want to resume. A lawyer spoke to me this morning and said that the suspension is one act, the other one is another course of action. I don't seem to agree with that, even though I'm not a lawyer, but law is all about common sense. When a case is now wearing the toga of a court, the court, you went to court to press for your rights and all of that. And the court said, okay, this was a position. Now the Senate appealed the position. That case, as we speak, is in the Court of Appeal. Until it is dispensed, maybe it goes to Supreme Court. So this is also to prevent people who operate within a collegiate system to quickly rush to court, because once the court takes its course, you surrender your rights until that court the case is fully dispensed with. So the Senate is not wrong from my own perspective. Now, I stand to be contradicted. I want superior argument on this, but I think this is common sense.
Let's listen to what her lawyer had to argue in this instance. I think Honorable West Idahosa, who is her lawyer in this instance, had some pretty strong argument on this matter.
Recommendation of a standing committee of the Senate was clear. He said 6 months. 6 months means 6 calendar months. And in any case, I dare say, with the greatest respect, there is nothing like a legislative month. We have legislative days. And that's why you find the rules talk about not more than 14 legislative days. And that's why you find that the Constitution talks about the Senate must sit for X number of days. We count in days, not in months. So where did they get the latitude to suspend her in months? It's part of the entire decline of the polity that we find ourselves in this country. Look, the Senate is not new. It's been in the Fourth Republic. It's been there since 1999. You've had the likes of Kadibo and Werem, Anyim, and David Mark. It's not the first leadership of the Senate. So I don't understand how senators can sit down and not help the institution to grow. How would you not be able to tell yourselves that what we are about to do is excessive and that we will not allow this to happen? Let's fall within the ambit of the law.
Honorable West Idahosa, who is the Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's lawyer, you heard that, saying that there is no such thing as, legislative months, is days. And in this instance, if someone is suspended for 6 months, it will be 6 calendar months, which has since elapsed.
I think all of this, with the sentiments canvassed by West Idahosa, they're part and parcel of what they put before the courts. It's now left for the courts to dispense with all of this based on arguments from both sides. I don't expect him to speak differently because he's handling a client's case and he has to show cause that is ready to defend her. As much as they've taken this case to court and the Senate has also put up a defense, it's a matter of clash of legal jurisprudence. So they will begin to argue all of this based on the issues canvassed.
Yeah, but
so this
one
that he's talking now, has been presented by before the court, and the courts have been arguing it.
And
so
the courts, interestingly, the court of first instance, some people criticize the judgment. There was a lot of criticism and analysis of that judgment given.
It's an open-ended judgment.
Saying that it was not exactly clear in its decisions. However, what was clear in some of the wordings was that what the Senate decided was excessive, and that you're denying the people of her constituency a right to be represented. If the judge couldn't be any clearer than that. If someone has now served that 6 months tenure and you are still depriving her, the opportunity to be able to represent her constituency, isn't the Senate really showing that it means to actually deprive her and the people of her constituency that right of representation?
Well, that is like food for thought for those who subsequently will want to rush to court when issues like this come up, because they have implications. You see, you can't take a case to court and you don't allow the process of complete. When that particular judgment was given open-endedly in the court of first instance, the Senate, call their own lawyers and all that, and they went to appeal. They have the right to appeal anyway, and so that particular case has been transferred to the appeal until that case is dispensed with. You can't arrest the process midway and say because she has to resume. If she resumes, what's the process? What's the essence of going to appeal if she resumes now? Because the whole process is about her unlawful suspension from the Senate. And people should know the implication of this. Not all the time you rush to court when you are operating within the collegiate system. I keep using the word collegiate because senators and all that, they have their own rules and internal mechanisms and all of that. It's the kind of spirit of camaraderie that exists there, and lobbying is part and parcel of the game.
Well,
so,
can I ask you, as
go ahead.
somebody who is a politician and someone who, because he spoke to something, he said something about the decline of the polity. And I'm sure
Decline?
he's not. Yes, you didn't hear him.
That is his idea.
Yeah, because you know he's not just representing her. This is somebody who's also served in the National Assembly.
It doesn't matter.
You don't
His
think
perspectives will be different from mine. What he's seen as decline. Now, if you raise a particular issue, I will understand. But I'm not seeing any decline of polity there. I'm not seeing any decline because if you are operating within the system, and you want to disrupt the system, let me put it that way, as a disruptor, you also have to wait for the consequences. There are consequences for actions. You see, people, it is good that you say the court is the last hope of the common man, is the last arbiter. But at the same time, you also have to know that there are implications of taking cases to court. There are cases, why do you think we have mediation? People who are now mediators all over the place, alternative crisis resolution or whatever. It is because the long process of the courts may not all the time favor your case, no matter how plausible, no matter how laudable it is. So what you do is to explore all of those alternatives. I was expecting that her lawyers would say, let us do alternative dispute resolution in this matter and find a way to arrive at a middle solution. And by now, maybe she will have people resumed before even 3 months or 4 months. But we don't have, when you are taking a hardline position, then you allow the courts to follow its post. Then the Senate is also taking a hardline position.
Do you think that this could affect, because some people are saying that this also reflects, because interestingly, Senator Natasha is a woman. She's one of the very few women, because the number of women in the National Assembly have been steadily declining. She's a woman. She is in the opposition party, the People's Democratic Party. She had a very tough time, winning her seat. She won, but had to go to court to prove that she won. All of this, how do you think it reflects on the leadership of the All Progressives Congress? Because this will be some of the things that people will canvass, that they have no respect for women. They do not. Yes, these are very plausible campaign issues come 2027.
No, listen. These are issues of sentiments. I don't see them as politics.
The last week, we knew that politics was an emotional matter.
No, okay. Let's look at it this way. I'm not saying her action because she's a woman is going to stop the process of going to court in the first place to win the case and all of that. Please, when you go to your lawyer, you want to press a case. Lawyers will always say, let's go to court, because you're going to pay them legal fees. And that is where they make their own income legitimately. So these are things that you are supposed to sit before your lawyer to look at. If I go to court, what are the implications? They'll look at it this way, they'll look at it, so that in the final analysis, when you now go to court, it will fall in line with your own expectation. But when you know some of these issues you canvass, and you couldn't canvass them before a lawyer, or your lawyer couldn't even raise them with you to say, okay, let's seek alternative dispute resolution on this matter, and you say you want to go to court, you allow the court process to go through, please.
Well, that might be true. Well, I'm just saying that, this might be one of the issues that the people will have to consider.
When you say people, I'm also people. When they consider it on the other side, we will consider it on this other side. She should know, ab initio, that she's a member of the opposition. She should converse that with her lawyer. The lawyer should explain, should explain the implications of that to her. And some other issues.
You're not worried about how this reflects on your own party?
The party is not the one to talk. The Senate is the one to speak.
Yes, but the Senate leadership is made up of people Peopled by the
That,
APC.
that is where lobbying comes in. All over the world, Senate, National Assembly, legislature, and all that, the key word is lobbying. That's why in America you have professional lobbyists who push through issues when it comes to this level.
Let me go to my colleague, Ayo. I know he also has questions.
Well, thank you, Markwe. Well, still talking about people and perspectives, we had Are Dele Momodu earlier in the week, Mr. Afegbua, and part of what he said when we raised this issue, of course, you're aware of the zoning of the PDP's presidential candidate to the southern part of Nigeria, essentially saying a southern presidency as far as they're concerned for another 4 years. Now, the position there, his own perspective is it's an instrument, that the zoning debate is an instrument to weaken opposition parties. What are your thoughts on that and the general idea of zoning the presidency to the north or to the south, and in this case, by the PDP to the southern part of Nigeria?
You see, don't forget that I was once a member of the PDP, and I was one of those who canvassed very strongly that after 8 years of presidential powers in the north, that it was the turn of the southern part of the country to present the next president. And for that reason, when I saw that the PDP were trying to be clever by half, trying, as it were, to even change the article and the provisions of their own constitution in Article 7 thereabout, I frowned at it. And I said, you don't have to come trying to be clever by how I'm thinking that an individual is the only one who can win you votes. When the algorithms of power is rotating downwards, you have to follow suit. They never agreed. They set up a committee. They did zoning, did on zoning and all of that. And in the final analysis, this is where it has landed them. Now, anybody who is championing presidential candidate of an opposition party from the northern part of the country when the south still has his own term going will be wasting his or her time. Because, see, in politics, you have to put the issues at play and analyze them strategically, so that when the result comes, you won't begin to lament. You remember 2 candidates of the previous election, Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar, and I think Amechi also, is saying that they are saying that, oh, if you give us opportunity, we are going to run for 4 years. And I watched one of their members of the coalition, ADC coalition, El-Rufai, the former governor of Kaduna State, on your program, I think a few days ago, saying that no, anybody who is saying that is not being sincere, because even as former governors as they were, they know that 4 years, first 4 years, is not enough for you to even begin to articulate the issues, let alone trying to deliver on democratic defense for the overwhelming interest or well-being of the people. So the point I'm making is that it is convenient for them to begin to say, oh, they want to zone. But please, anybody who wants to zone should zone to the south, number one. And if they go to the south, they should also know that they are carrying is a kind of baggage, because the northern political structure would not want a fresh hand to come on board that will spend another 8 years. If by accident they are able to displace the current incumbent, and then 8 years plus the 4 years of the incumbent, make it 12 years. Power, not getting to the north in the next 12 years or so will be like a sacrilege. So it is convenient for the majority of those persons to rather support the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu another 4 years, so that it will terminate 2031, and it could be the turn of the North. This, in the case of the APC, is an unwritten code. But in the case of the PDP, except they have changed the constitution now, it's written in Article 7, Section 1C of their own constitution. So for me, for political permutations, for gaining some kind of support from the public, for enriching the process, they can play up all of these things. But for God's sake, nobody should tell you he's coming from the south to spend 4 years, because that for me, that is just like telling a bogus lies. So I am saying that it is convenient and more appropriate for the north, so to speak, to support.
Just 1 second, if you can hear me.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whose tenure is known by law that it will terminate 2031.
You don't think that the opinion by Mr. Peter Obi that he will spend just 4 years, you don't think it is valid? You don't think it is possible?
That means not that I don't think, I know, as a matter of fact, given my over 30 years experience in politics, active politics, I know that it is not possible. And when I say it is not possible, it's because of the kind of idiosyncrasies, that we see in our politicians and political leaders. They will canvass one thing when they want to contest election, or even when they want to make a point, and at other times, the contradiction will set in. Peter Obi cannot come in 4 years to say he wants to transform Nigeria and make the kind of impact that he has been canvassing, going around the country talking about in 4 years, when he couldn't transform Anambra State in 8 years. In 8 years, his record in Anambra is not an El Dorado kind of rating. So why does he think that talking about 36 states of the Federation now, with all our complexities and all of that, that is going to make an impact in 4 years? For God's sake, please, even settling down to the business of governance will take you more than 1 year. That is just the truth, because this country is huge, with all kinds of competing interests every now and then. So if they are saying this to cajole the people, to tell a lie to the people, to lie to them, well, I say good to them. But for those of us who are rational thinkers, those of us who are discerning in our own estimation of the politics of the country, we just laugh at them. How possible can you say you want to transform Nigeria in 4 years?
Well,
it's not possible.
Mr. Afegbua,
Even
that
8
also,
years, you are still going to be struck. Where are we? 8 years of President Buhari?
Well, it also raises a
it was
question.
more or less like a Holocaust. That's the truth. I am one of those persons who criticize that particular government. So,
Yeah. My apologies. It also raises that question that I ask from time to time, Mr. Afegbua. And that is the fact that many times we focus so much on the federal government. And we criticize the politics of the federal government. And by the federal government, I'm talking about the executive, legislature, and the judiciary, and all of its agencies and representatives. But most of the time, we tend to cut the state governments a lot of slack. We have it on good authority, the news is everywhere, that there are more resources being deployed to the states now. But it would seem like everyone is just saying it's still at the table of the federal government to ensure that Nigerians have better standards of living. When the state governments get a lot more resources now, all over the state, every state gets a lot more resources now, yet the people are not feeling the impact of the resources, increased resources that they get. And where do you think we go from here?
Well, thank you for this question. It's one of the points I raised in another sister platform a couple of days ago, where we were looking at the issues of federal and state and in terms of the relationship, particularly now that we are getting more money at the state level. And this is a huge challenge to the media. The media should also focus on this particular point you have raised, so that they create the right consciousness in the people, conscientize people, and mobilize the electorate to begin to interrogate government at different levels, both state government, local government, and even the federal government. Once there is knowledge of what transpires and what obtains in those areas, they will be able to synchronize them and form an opinion. For example, in my state, every time the governor talks in my state of Edo, he tells you that, well, all thanks to President Tinubu that he's been able to do X, Y, Z because of the kind of resources he's getting. Aside from the internally generated revenue that he has increased from 5.5 billion to 10 billion every month, what he's getting from the federal government is encouraging him to do a lot of projects in the state. So if you put Edo State, for example, under your binoculars and you want to see what has what has transpired in the last 8 months, you will see leadership, at work. You will see performance at work. So how much of that is reflected in other states it will now be the responsibility of the media to begin to interrogate those issues. And it's very key. This point you have raised is very key. And that's why I keep telling the opposition people, I said, you are coming, you want to govern, you want to govern. You have to tell us exactly what you want to do differently from what obtains. Do you want to stop more money from going to the states so that we know that this is what you are coming to do? Do you want to stop the student loan that the present government is giving? Do you want to stop floating of the naira? Do you want to stop quite a number of constructions that are ongoing so that you give us subsidy? Are you going to introduce subsidy again? So if they come up with their policy framework, we'll be able to interrogate and dissect them. The Labour Party, for example, unable to articulate itself together, cannot possibly be talking about presenting a candidate for presidency. That is the truth. You have two factions of Labour Party. They will continue to. You have the ADC, they are position. When you talk about ADC, ADC stays at the back of any leader. They are ADC, AD camp to President Tinubu. Tinubu is in the front leading the country, and the ADC members of the coalition, they will stay at the back. They're taking their position.
You don't seem to take, I was listening to a question that you responded to with Ayo. I noticed that you avoided saying good luck to them because you said good to them. That was what you said. But I noticed you avoided saying good luck to them because you do know that President Goodluck Jonathan is one of the people that has been wooed in this instance, to be able to at least fulfill the one term, it would seem, that is the turn of the southern region. And people think that he is a very viable option. He doesn't need to make any promises in that regard. So I'm just a little curious as to whether or not you are really dismissing the opposition and you think that there is no opposition ahead of 2027.
You see, Mark, on the case of the Goodluck Jonathan aspiration, well, I personally told him. He came to me now to see President Buhari, President Babangida, former President Babangida. I ushered him to the house, and just on the sideline, I said, this thing is not going to work. I'll make you take a meeting. You see, I've also written to advise him that he should not allow people to chop his money. Chop his money. That is, because you see, you were sitting down as a president, incumbent president with all the powers. You were voted out. You conceded. You have now attained a level that people now refer to you as, a statesman, a proper statesman that didn't want any blood to be split in the process and, accepted the outcome of election result. You should ride on that crest to a pedestal that will continue to consolidate your leadership in the entire global space.
That's your view.
Now I'm coming now. You now want to come. The people who uprooted you, you want to come. A Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a typical politician, a strategist extraordinary, who has just plunged into the presidential first time and clinching it. And you think you can displace him? When members of your party, governors are defecting, lawmakers are defecting, House of Rep members are defecting, senators are defecting, and at the local level, local governments are defecting. My sister, all of these defections are platforms of engaging and win the voters. You can't come to my village, for example, of Afegbua, and you want to come and preach Goodluck Jonathan to us. When in the South, we knew that he didn't impact positively on the entire South in terms of projects. And this is just being fatwa. Go and cross-check. I remember when he was campaigning for his election in 2015, he said when he gets the second term that he's going to focus on the South. Those are not the kind of rhetorics I want to be hearing. At this point in time, please, former President Goodluck Jonathan Ebele, I am being honest to you. I know if you are listening to me. Please run away from those who are pushing you to come and contest in 2027.
Well, as someone will say, it's your view. We have to thank you very much. Yes, it's your views, and we have to thank you for sharing them on Sunrise Daily this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Kasim Afegbua, who is the commissioner designate in Edo State.
You didn't even congratulate me. You didn't congratulate me. Yeah,
have you been screened?
I've been screened, I've been confirmed. I'm only waiting for portfolio. But you didn't congratulate me.
Well, congratulations. Thank you so much for coming on the program. While the argument is still going on for the reinstatement of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, this conversation on reserved seats for women, making sure that the number of seats for women in the National Assembly, because let's be frank, the numbers abysmal. It's also still ongoing. And we've been seeing members of the National Assembly, as a matter of fact, the leadership of the National Assembly saying that they support this particular bill. But is it a check that members who are lobbying for the passage of this bill, is it a check that they can take to town? Well, we are speaking this morning with Osasu Igbenedion Oguche, who is the convener of Reserved Seats for Women Bill Campaign Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us, Osasu. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. So good to see you too.
I have heard you speak very passionately on the matter for reserved seats. And I've heard at least the leadership of the House of Representatives, and I've also heard the leadership of the Senate, especially the Senate. Senator Afegbua is always saying, I don't hate women. And it seems that with this issue with Senator Natasha has put him and the leadership in a bind. Do you think that it might force their hands to finally push this bill just to prove that they have nothing against the female gender?
Thank you, Mark. But we definitely stand at a very critical crossroads and a very viable opportunity for us to capitalize on all that is happening, the good, the bad, the ugly, to push this bill into law. The leadership of the House of Representatives and the Senate, respectively, have thrown their weight behind the bill. The Honorable Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas, is a huge champion of the Reserved Seats for Women's bill. The Deputy Speaker, who is the sponsor of the bill, is also a huge champion of the bill, of course. The Senate President, who I led a delegation of women civil society organization groups to visit, threw his full weight behind the bill, as well as his Deputy Barrow Jibrin. So the entire leadership of the Senate and the House of Representatives have said publicly and privately that they are in full support of this bill. Let's not forget the other principal officers and members of the Senate and House of Reps, respectively, as well. We've actually taken this campaign also to the state governors, to ministers, to wives of state governors, to wives of parliamentarians who have all thrown their support behind the bill. So we really think that we stand at a very critical time where we can see this bill actualize and become law. Because as you're well aware, there are only 14 women out of 360 members in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, only 4 out of 109 senators are women. Across the 36 states houses of assemblies, we have 993 members. Only 51 are women. 26 out of 36 states do not even have a single woman as members of the state houses and assemblies. As a matter of fact, my running joke is that the chairperson of the women committee is a man. So things have to change, and it's definitely a period where we believe that our campaign, our advocacy will be fruitful this time around. And as you're well aware, this bill was proposed in the 8th and the 9th Assembly.
I was just about to take you there, to the 9th Assembly in particular, where we also saw that the leadership, in fact, as a matter of fact, in the 8th Assembly, Senator Saraki, who was the president of the Senate at the time, you know, had very strong support for. It wasn't reserved bills, right? I think it was something about something in gender. I'm trying to remember what the name of that bill.
Special seats bill, and Senator
Special seats was in the 9th Assembly. And I remember Senator Abiodun Olujimi championing.
That was in the 8th Assembly.
It was in the 8th Assembly?
Yes.
Okay. But I think it was also something on gender, you know, a gender equality bill, which did not sit quite right with senators in the 8th Assembly. In the 9th Assembly, we saw the House of Reps Speaker, Senate, beg your pardon, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, you know, throwing his weight behind this, is it reserved seats? What was it called, reserved seats?
They still call it special seats.
So special seats for women.
Seats.
So we've always seen the leadership, and that's why I'm wondering why it is this time around you have particular confidence that it could sail through, because this is not the first time we're seeing the leadership throw their weight behind a bill like this for women.
That's a very important question, Mark. There. So in the 8th and the 9th Assembly, in the 8th Assembly, the Gender and Equal Opportunities bills, it wasn't just one bill, bills were conflated with a number of issues: indigenship rights, voting rights, etc., etc. And In the 9th Assembly, they had 5 gender bills that were all reviewed at the same time. And at the time of voting, Aisha Buhari, the wife of the president at the time, had come in and sat in the chamber saying, listen, this is very important to me, it's important to Nigerian women, you need to vote for it. Unfortunately, that strategy did not work in our favor because the senators and the members of the House of Representatives saw that as a form of intimidation. They said to us categorically that you have not consulted widely for the passage of this bill, so you cannot sit down in our chambers on the day of voting and tell us, to vote in support of this bill. So even though we've seen the leadership vocally throw their support behind this bill in the 8th and the 9th Assembly respectively, there were a number of issues that hindered our success. The conflating of issues, adding, many gender bills together as one, adding bills that have to do with persons living with disabilities, voting rights, citizenship rights, and all of that. What we've done differently this time around in the 10th Assembly, we've streamlined our demands into one, and it's the reserved seats for women's bill, HB 1349 in the House of Representatives, SB 440 in the Senate. What we're seeking in this bill is to add 37 additional seats in the Senate, that's representative of 1 seat per state and the FCT, and 37 additional seats in the House of Representatives, 1 seat per state and FCT, and 3 additional seats per state across the 36 state houses of assembly. So that's 108 additional seats at the subnational level, and 74 additional seats at the national level, giving you a total of 182 additional seats for only women to contest. And this doesn't hinder women from contesting the traditional seats. And I'll tell you something very funny, my sister. When we go for advocacy and we're meeting one-on-one with these parliamentarians, because of course the work that we are doing in terms of communication and advocacy to the general public is very important, because these are the constituents that are going to pressurize their parliamentarians to vote in support of the bill. But we have been meeting with lawmakers one-on-one. And every time we ask them, are you in support of this bill? First of all, the education is, one of the things we try to tackle. We break it down for them. This is what the bill entails. Then there was this gap of knowledge of what they thought the bill was seeking to do. Some of them thought it was looking to take seats away from them. So once we tell them that, Honorable Senator, this is looking to add a... Say, you talked that one since. As long as it's not taking from us, we're happy to support it. And I think that's the message that we must keep on reiterating, that these additional seats are going to add to the National Assembly, so we can show up the number of women who are participating in our democratic process. Because remember, this is not tokenism. Democracy is about the full representation of the Nigerian people. Women make up 50% of Nigeria's population, yet we're only represented 4% in the National Assembly. You cannot make laws against maternal and infant mortality, child malnutrition, without women being in the room. A man doesn't have the experience of what it is to be pregnant, what it is to go out there try to fend for your child, right? We bring a level of governance that men cannot necessarily empathize with, right? Because we are intrinsically created to legislate for reforms that have to do with education, that has to do with healthcare, that has to do with the betterment of our immediate communities. And I believe that when we have more women on the decision-making table, we will transform this nation hand in hand with our male allies. Remember, it's not just about women coming to take over. It's about partnership. It's about bringing both genders on the table to see how we can move Nigeria forward. When our lawmakers go to the Interparliamentary Union, they always ask them, what are you talking about? What kind of position do you want to be able to occupy in this apex organization when you do not have women on your table? So, women have to get involved, basically.
A lot of questions to be asked, because when we say that you know, we're adding to the National Assembly, especially at a time when people are also looking at the numbers in terms of, you know, how many people are actually representing the entire country. And they're thinking, look, we're actually asking for a unicameral legislature. We should reduce the number of legislators that we have. We need to streamline, because we're also looking at cutting down the cost of government or the cost of governance, as the case might be. How do we also justify this argument for additional seats in the face of this? But I'll let you respond to that when Ayo adds his question. Okay. Ayo, over to you.
That's actually my question, Markwe, and it's very interesting that you went there. The second leg to that question, madam, is the men that are saying that, you know, you're going to take seats away from us, they are looking at today. In another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, a good percentage of them are not going to be eligible for these posts that they are jostling for. So this is essentially about the future of Nigeria. I know that interests must contend, but can we prioritize the interest of Nigeria as a nation over and above that of the personal interests of the so-called men who are representing everyone? What is wrong, for instance, with the political class saying 2/3 to the men, 1/3 of the same seats we have today to women all over the nation, both at the federal and the state legislatures?
Thank you, Ayo. That's a brilliant question. The beauty of the reserve seats for women's bill is that it's a sunset clause provision. 4 election cycles, giving you about 16 years. So we'll come back to the table after this 16 years and say, hey, have we successfully been able to shore up the number of women who are participating in Parliament? And if that question is answered in the affirmative, then we throw out the bill. Then we know that our women have built the capacity. They had the opportunity to be able to shore up the numbers and legislate and prove themselves that they are worthy of these reserve seats and they are worthy of participating in a national discourse. So we believe that with these sunset clause, it also makes the other parliamentarians comfortable that women are not necessarily asking for handouts. We're just looking to be able to ensure that women can vie successfully, because we know the barriers to entry today. They are structural, they're religious, they're cultural, they're even legal, and let's not forget financial. So we're ensuring that in these 16 years, when women will be participating through the Reserve Seats for Women's Act, when it passes into law, that we can get more voices in the room and that we will see the dividends of democracy through the improvement of our healthcare, the improvement of our education and other social amenities. Then finally, the question that Mape asked, what are the numbers? Does this increase the cost of governance? PLAC, Policy Legal Advocacy Center, had ran the numbers and they said it actually would add less than 1% of the national budget once this bill passes into law. This is a very appropriate investment to make, not just for Nigerian women, but for the country as a whole. Because as I said earlier, the dividends of our democracy will be felt by all once we have these additional voices participating in legislating for the improvement and the betterment of all Nigerians.
Well, perhaps another issue is...
One last question, and this has to do with which constituency will women be represented?
Perfect. That's a lovely question. In the Senate, it would be the entire state. In the House of Representatives, it will be the entire state. In the state houses of assemblies, it will be the 3 senatorial districts. So the 3 additional seats that would be added to the State House of Assemblies will be representative of the 3 existing senatorial districts. Then in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, they will be representing the entire state.
All right. Excuse me. I think that we can actually wrap up this conversation here. We certainly will be looking forward to seeing how this conversation goes in the National Assembly. I can only wish, you know, that if we're up to be, we already have the...
I know, and I would love to mention that the national public hearing is on the 22nd of this month, less than 2 weeks away. We want all Nigerians to show up. Tentatively, it's scheduled to hold at the International Conference Center. So when you show up to these public hearings, you make your voices heard, you reiterate the importance to your lawmakers that this is a bill that is very personal to you and you want it passed. So it's very important that all Nigerians come out in their numbers to the International Conference Center in Abuja on the 22nd of September, which is the day before resumption, for their voices to be heard and their support to be shown for the reserved seats for Women's Bill. And voting is also tentatively scheduled to hold in October. So it's very important that we're putting this pressure out there right now on lawmakers, reiterating to them the importance of this bill, and also thank so far. And for other information on the reserved seats for Women's Bill, people can visit reservedseatsforwomen.org and follow our social media at Reserved Seats on Twitter and Nigerians for Nigeria on Instagram.
Well, that's where we wrap up today's conversation on Sunrise Daily. We have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. Osasu Igbenedion Oguche is the convener, Reserved Seats for Women Bill Campaign Coalition. Thank you once more for coming.
Thank you so much, Mayakbe and Ayo. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Well, Ayo, I do owe you an apology, but because you couldn't get more questions in. But we have to thank you so much for watching this morning. Maokbe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, let's just say that the reserved seats for women bill is already active on Sunrise Daily, so it's just fine. Amaya Makinde, enjoy the rest of your day.